serve South Minneapolis. 2020 has been one heck of a year. Um, we started um, talking about um, surplus. We started talking about, all the vision and all the things that we're going to accomplish during the 2020 legislative session. And um, for me, one of the biggest things that I challenge myself and others around me is using racial equity lenses on every legislation that we're carrying, looking at how each legislation impacts the Black, Indigenous, and people of color in Minnesota. As we know, Minnesota is a great state if you are if you are a white person, but it's also a terrible place to live if you're a person of color. In every sector: health, education, wealth, housing. Um, by March, we had a pandemic that hit the Black community the hardest, followed by the unfortunate murder of and gruesome murder of Brother George Floyd. May he rest in power, and the civil unrest that followed that. So during COVID-19, as soon as COVID-19 started, we always know that when there is catastrophe or disasters or pandemic or whatever you call this that's happening to us, uh, when there's a problem, it's going to impact people at the most vulnerable. So we knew as soon as this started that it's going to hit our communities the hardest. People who don't have enough money, people who are one paycheck away from, being kicked out of their homes, people, businesses who are one paycheck away from paying for their rent and being closed, down. So we advocated for business loans. The first business loans that we did and fought hard for, alongside with Representative Noor and Representative Moran, who both served with me in the Jobs Committee. Then we find out that overwhelmingly majority of our community did not get those business loans because of the way that they were set up. We also find out within the first few weeks of going into COVID-19 and distance learning that thousands of kids from the Black community don't have access to internet or Chromebooks. Minneapolis alone, the first week was reporting that over 10,000 kids don't have access to internet or Chromebooks. Also, many issues related to people not being able or not having access to apply for unemployment benefits or having some sort of a barrier. Also, housing. We advocated for halting evictions. That was the governor's executive order, and one of the reasons why we're, fighting to not end the governor's emergency powers. Of course, we need those emergency powers, but also what's going to happen if we, if this emergency powers end and there are hundreds of thousands of evictions. Right now, evictions are on halt, like the eviction moratorium, what happens? And then we also fought for $100 million of rental and mortgage assistance that recently the governor announced that's available right now. All in all, our communities right now, whether it's the Black community or the Indigenous community or communities of color or Latinx communities that are non-white communities are struggling in this pandemic. They're struggling. I represent Lake Street, which was many businesses were burned down during the civil unrest. We still have no means or no way to help those businesses because every time we bring up the assistance for those businesses, it doesn't go anywhere. We don't have any Senate. Our Senate counterparts are not working with us on that issue because they're hang on the idea that Minneapolis, our leadership let Minneapolis burn, so we shouldn't be helping, or whatever politics it is. I'm not going to get into the politics of this, and I'm not going to get into the partisan issues of this or bipartisan whatever. What I'm going to say is that in the midst of the two parties, butting heads together, our community is loses the most. because right now we have businesses that were impacted by the civil unrest. Many businesses who are black and brown businesses, who are small businesses who may have one full-time person or don't even have a full-time person, just the owner working around the clock, that were, either burned down, or there's a water damage, or there's looting that happened and everything is gone. Those businesses are sitting idle right now because they don't have assistance from the state. They don't have assistance from the city. There is nothing that's happening for them. So for me, my fight is to make sure that the voices of these businesses are echoed on the House floor, and the need for rebuilding Lake Street, rebuilding West Broadway, rebuilding University Avenue. And we have, Representative Rina Moran did that. I did that. Representative Noor did that. I'm sure our Senate, counterparts who are on the call did that. Senator Hayden and Senator Champion. I don't know if there's another senator on the call with us. But at the end, we have not had the warm, or empathetic response that we were hoping that our communities, many weeks later, that are still sitting on businesses that are closed because they have not received the help that they need. We are far away from being done. We're going back to third special session, and we're hoping that we're going to pass the bonding bill. There is an equity lenses on the bonding bill. Not enough, if you ask me, but people think that I'm radical, so it's not. Some people may say there is some equity, but I say it's not enough. We have a long fight and a hard fight to fight. Minnesota, as we know, has terrible disparity numbers, and we gotta address those numbers. And the only way you can address those numbers is first to invest in communities that have not been invested in many years. That's where the problem starts, with education, with health disparity, with wealth gap, with housing. And that's what I'm there for, is to be that voice, that voice of reason, to make sure that our communities' voices are heard and their voices are being echoed on the House floor every time I get a chance.